It is said that doctors are meant to heal, to save lives. They are the light of hope when death casts its shadow. But what if the very hands that were meant to heal become the cause of unspeakable horror? Hospitals are considered safe places, sanctuaries where the sick are cared for. But not every doctor has good intentions. Some are obsessed with the human body, hungry for the power between life and death, and eager to tamper with the fragile thread that separates the living from the dead. We put our trust in them, believing that they will do everything to keep us alive. But what if that trust is misplaced? What if the one meant to save you is the reason you take your last breath? Tonight, I will tell you a true story that proves that sometimes, the most terrifying monsters do not hide in the dark. They walk among us, dressed in white coats, with steady hands and warm smiles. But behind their gentle voice and professional demeanor, something more horrifying than you can ever imagine may be lurking. This is the story of Dr. Michael Swango, who was supposed to be a healer but became one of the most terrifying medical serial killers in history. Dr. Swango was an intelligent and ambitious man. He earned his medical degree and seemed destined for success. But something was deeply wrong inside him. His obsession with death became evident early on. His classmates noticed his disturbing fascination with violent deaths and autopsies. Where others felt compassion for patients, he seemed to enjoy their suffering. From the very beginning, there were signs that something was not right. His classmates recalled the eerie way he would linger around cadavers during anatomy class, running his fingers over the cold flesh as if he were admiring a masterpiece. He was particularly drawn to violent deaths, spending hours analyzing autopsy reports with a chilling level of enthusiasm. When others expressed disgust, he would simply smile, a knowing, unsettling smile that sent shivers down their spines. Despite his unsettling nature, Swango was charismatic. He had an uncanny ability to earn people's trust. Patients felt reassured by his confident demeanor, and his colleagues often dismissed his odd behavior as mere eccentricity. But beneath his charm lurked a dark fascination, one that would soon turn deadly. He was not just interested in the science of medicine, he was drawn to the moment when life faded into death, and he wanted to control that moment. And then, the deaths began. During his internship, an alarming number of patients under his care started dying unexpectedly. Nurses and other doctors grew suspicious. Patients who were recovering suddenly took a turn for the worse. The pattern was impossible to ignore. But in an effort to avoid bad publicity, the hospital let him go quietly instead of conducting a full investigation. And that mistake cost many lives. Hospitals have always been places of miracles and tragedies. But for some, the tragedy is not accidental, it is orchestrated. Patients trust doctors with their lives, but sometimes, they become victims instead. A nurse at one of Swango's hospitals recalled a chilling moment when she entered a patient's room late at night. The heart monitor was beeping erratically. The man, who had been recovering just hours before, was now convulsing violently. As she rushed to call for help, she saw Swango standing in the shadows, watching, silent, unmoving. She later confessed that she would never forget the look in his eyes. It was not the look of a concerned doctor. It was the look of someone witnessing something they had intended to happen. Swango moved from one hospital to another, leaving death in his wake. Everywhere he went, patients mysteriously died, especially those who had received medication or food from him. Some nurses even caught him tampering with 4 bags. But every time suspicions arose, he simply moved on, because no one wanted to believe that a doctor could be a murderer. One hospital administrator, reviewing patient records, found a disturbing pattern. A seemingly healthy man, admitted for a routine procedure, was found dead the next morning. A woman, recovering well from pneumonia, suddenly went into cardiac arrest just after receiving her evening medication. The deaths were labeled as unfortunate complications, but those who worked closest to Swango knew better. He wasn't treating illness. He was creating it. In one instance, a patient who was recovering from minor surgery suddenly started convulsing just minutes after Swango visited him. The man's last words: "That doctor, he did something to me." Moments later, he was dead. Some survivors lived to tell their horror stories. One elderly woman, given what was supposed to be a mild sedative, awoke paralyzed, unable to move or scream. She watched in terror as Swango loomed over her, a small smile playing at the corners of his lips. He leaned down and whispered, "He should be dead by now." But by some cruel twist of fate, she survived. She reported the incident, but no one believed her. After all, why would a doctor want to harm his patients? One of the most disturbing aspects of Swango's crimes was how he got away with it for so long. Hospitals suspected him. Nurses feared him. But time and time again, they let him go. It was easier to turn a blind eye than to face the horrifying truth that one of their own was a killer. Because of this, his killing spree continued for years. The system failed its patients. Finally, when authorities began taking the allegations seriously, Swango's true nature was exposed. Investigators found horrifying death-related notes and poison recipes in his home. By the time he was arrested, he had already claimed the lives of over 60 patients, though the real number may never be known. He was sentenced to life in prison, but the horror he spread remains a chilling reminder that darkness can hide behind a friendly face. The most terrifying part: several hospitals had the chance to stop him, but they chose to protect their reputation instead. Hospitals are supposed to be places of healing. But sometimes, they conceal things far worse than death itself. The next time you trust a doctor with your life, ask yourself, do you really know them? Medical horror is not just a tale of fiction. There have been other cases: doctors who played God, nurses who took lives instead of saving them. If you think this was just one isolated story, think again. The medical world has its shadows, and sometimes, the worst monsters are the ones holding the scalpel. If you enjoyed this terrifying true story, don't forget to subscribe for more spine-chilling tales. And now, sleep well, if you can. And remember, sometimes, the person you trust the most could be the one who takes everything from you. Even your last breath.